GoDaddy for a year for 143 to renew.
Sounds about.
What's this premium thing for $64? That's GoDaddy as well. That just happened this
So
month.
the premium is, I'm just going to tell you what it is. It's, and the $143 one is website hosting. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
We're good to go.
I think the DNS was after the website setup. Then.
How do you mean?
Well, they're not due the same time, so I'm assuming one happened and then the other one happened.
Probably. Yeah. All right. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is Erda City Council. Today is Thursday, November 30th, 2023 at 7 p.m. We're in the Tooele County Auditorium located at 47 South Main Street, Tooele, Utah. This meeting is going over Google Meet and also YouTube. We'll start off with a roll call here. Scott Grubay, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Greg Smith.
I'm here.
Jess Bird is here. Cal Martin.
Here.
And Terry Miner.
Here.
We are all here tonight. We also have some councilman-elect here. We also have our attorney and our city planner. And then, of course, as always, Jen, our reporter. Kayla, I think it might be your turn to lead us in the pledge.
Sounds good.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're gonna now move on to public comment. I've asked Daryl to lead us off, and that way we'll have some time afterwards to respond to, if anyone wants to respond to anything he has.
Let's get that warmed up there for a minute.
Assume you want these lights off.
Thanks. I'll try to be really quick. I just kind of wanted to cover a few things with you tonight. Obviously, we're here to talk to you about the Copper Cove Development Agreement, which is really taking Erda Estates and Tilby Village and combining them into one development agreement. I think as we go down through this, hopefully you'll see why I think that's the best for the city. We'll kind of talk through some of that. But before we get to that, I kind of wanted to just lay a little bit of the groundwork. And what I've called here is approval versus decision. When I usually come before city councils, yours, Tooele counties, Tooele cities, wherever it is, I'm usually, in fact, I think I'm always asking for an approval. You know, I'm asking for a conditional permit to be approved. I'm asking for a rezone to be approved. You know, I've got a piece of ground that you could build a house on and we want to build a gas station on it. So I'm asking the city council or the county council for the approval to do that. That's usually when I'm up here. But tonight, I actually think I'm not here asking for an approval. I'm actually asking you guys, asking Erda City for a decision. To make a decision on what something is going to look like. That's really what I think I'm here for more than an approval. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. The first one is, I realize that Erda Estates and Tilby Village, at least my opinion, maybe I shouldn't say I realize, but my belief is that there's not a single one of you that would ever approve Erda Estates and Tilby Village. That if I was here saying, please approve Erda Estates or please approve Tilby Village, I think I would get a 0 to 5 vote in my favor. In my recollection, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that each of you ran on a limit growth platform, or at least I'm not in favor of smaller lots, and I'm definitely not in favor of higher density. That's my recollection when we were down in the Desert Peak building, and they were kind of having the election debates and the comment thing there. That's my recollection of it. And so I realized that if I was here asking for approval of either one of those, it wouldn't happen. But what I think I'm actually here asking for is for you to make a decision. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So what I'm actually asking for tonight is to make a decision of, do we want this or do we want this? And what I mean by that is, back in 2019, we were approved to build 328 lots. And so I'm going to build 328 homes. I'm going to build 328 homes. What I'm asking from Erda City is to help us figure out what that's going to look like. That's the decision in my mind tonight, is what are those 328, and then we'll talk a little bit about Tilby Village also, but what's that going to look like? I personally think the Copper Cove is a lot better than Erda Estates. If you remember, probably 18 months ago, I stood right here, soon after Erda City, over 18 months ago, came into existence, and I said to you guys, hey, we have Erda Estates, it was approved, I think we can do better. It's coming, but I think we can do better. And so now we've had an 18-month or 20-month journey from that point to tonight. I've been with planning and zoning how many times? I know I've stood up and talked to you guys a couple of times about Erda Estates and Tilby Village. I think we can do better. So now let's maybe take a few minutes and go down why I think Copper Cove is better, and hopefully you'll have the same opinion. And I'll go through these quickly, so if you have any questions, cut me off and ask me, or obviously you can ask me later in the meeting. The first one is, Copper Cove gives additional commercial. It gives actually additional acreage to commercial for Erda City. And my thought is we all know that commercial is the lifeblood of any city. When you guys have to balance that budget, it sure is a whole lot easier to do when you got commercial tax base coming in. We can talk more about that if you want. That commercial is just positioned better. It's over on the corner of Erda Way and SR 36. It's just a better use of that ground. You'll get better commercial. I think Copper Cove matches the Erda City General Plan better. It's not perfect, but it matches it a whole lot better than Tilby Village and Erda Estates. And so if we really want to say, let's get as close as we can to the general plan that you guys put all the effort, the city put all the effort into developing, Copper Cove gets us right close to the Erda City General Plan. The next one is that it eliminates Tooele County Chapter 9. I've mentioned to you many times that Tooele County Chapter 9 is a mess. It's probably partly why Tooele County repealed it. I did have somebody that's really knowledgeable out here in the county. They've been on planning and zoning commissions and city council stuff out here, and they said to me, Daryl, I think you're actually underplaying how significant this one is. I've always listed it as one of the benefits of Copper Cove, but he said to me, I think you're underplaying it. That's maybe the most important, or right at the top, because if we have to proceed under Chapter 9, it's going to be a mess. It's just poorly written. And if you remember, it took us, I think John's probably tired of me saying this, but it took us 6 attorneys to just figure out if there was a tolling in effect in Chapter 9. The first simplest question took us 6 attorneys and probably 4 months to figure that out. And I'm afraid that if we stay under Chapter 9, it's just going to be that. And I don't want to spend the money on attorneys, and I sure don't want to see Erda City have to spend money on attorneys. It's just simply a waste. The next thing there, and I put this on here, I debated because this is the advantages, but I know that for most, if not all the people in Erda City, they would see this as an advantage. There's a residential unit reduction. So when we're working with this Planning and Zoning Commission, one of the things that they said to us is, we believe that you need to reduce the residential units, the number of homes that you're going to be building in Erda Estates and Tilby Village. So I went back to Joe and says, hey, are you okay, are you willing to reduce the Tilby Village residential units? And he says, yes, I'm willing to do that. And so we took out 28 residential units. That's a 38% reduction in Tilby Village residential units. That's significant. Which, when you add the two units together, the two projects together, Erda Estates and Tilby Village, it's a 7% reduction over the entire two projects. So there's a significant reduction in residential units. So if one of your desires or goals is to see less homes built, this is probably the best shot that we got to do that. So there's a reduction in the residential units. Now, let's kind of just give you a little bit about what was approved and go over the two different options, the two different concepts. So back in 2019, under Tooele County Chapter 9, this is Erda Estates that was approved. And I see a couple, it's fine. And if this is what Erda City would like to see built in that area, I'll honor that. That's definitely one of the decisions that you guys could reach tonight, was to say, no, we'll just stay with what was approved back in 2019 and we'll proceed. Don't have a problem with that. But I think we can do better. The two major things, probably three, but two major things to keep it really quickly of what I think there's issues with this is, starting out here, we have higher density residential. So this is 100 townhomes out here on Cochrane. And so this really doesn't follow good community planning. If we had Rochelle, she'd probably agree with this, that the best way to do community planning is you have your commercial. Next to that, you go to your higher density residential to buffer the commercial, and then you go to your single family. Well, if you see this, it's just flipped that. We have commercial, we go to single family, and then we have our higher density residential out here, which puts it clear out on Cochrane, further out into the city. I can explain why that was done 4 years ago, but I won't waste the time now unless you want to. But so I think that's not the best. The other one up here is we have a frontage road right here, and we have commercial on the east side of it. But really what I think is best is when you put in a frontage road, it's probably better to have commercial on both sides of that. You bring the frontage road in, you have commercial on both sides, getting the benefit of that frontage road, expanding your commercial. I think it's just a better layout. Now let's go to Copper Cove. And so in my mind, Copper Cove fixes those two issues, and then we'll hit on the ones that I had on that previous slide. So here's Copper Cove. And so you'll see that frontage road. Here's the frontage road. We have commercial on both sides of it. You'll also notice here that there is no high density residential. So we've eliminated all townhomes. So this is drawn with only single family residents.
Daryl, you're getting close to 10 minutes.
Okay, all right, I'll skip a little faster there. Here's the Erda City General Plan. So this is what Erda City General Plan is calling for commercial. So here's SR 36, here's your city limits, here is Erda Way and Cochrane. So if you look, that's commercial. So this is what that red line is, what it calls for commercial. So you'll see we're doing all a commercial. We have a little bit here that's not, and then there's a little residential there that's not. Really what we're talking about is this pink. So do you want this pink to be residential or commercial? That's the decision tonight. There it is again. And so really, again, the decision in my mind is you're choosing between how do you want that residential to look. If you want it to look like this, then vote no tonight. If you want it to look like this, vote yes tonight. That's really the decision point. Any questions on that? Thanks.
Plain and simple. Thank you, Daryl. Okay, anybody else?
I think the mapper want to go eventually, but since we're... Thanks, Scott. You know how I did that? It's like you've practiced. Thanks, guys. This time of year with the election that just came up, and it's fun to reflect, and got a lot of time with you guys and being in that chair. Thanks for your service, especially Jess and Cale who are gone, but even more so those of you who are staying. So.
You too, Corey.
I haven't done as much as you though, right? Anyways.
For you at the start, we wouldn't be here.
I didn't know about that.
You had to record everything.
Me? Okay, all right. What if how can I stand so you can hear me? Since we're already talking about Copper Cove, I obviously on the Planning Commission, and we've discussed this quite a bit, and we voted for, actually, and I'll let Rochelle present that in a minute, but we voted for you guys not to approve it. But I think that when we get to this stage, one side's presented, and I wanted to help see the other side and some of my thoughts in it. So, as I see it, we already have a plan in place. Erda Estates and Tilly Village. I think Daryl's done a great job explaining that, and this is another option. So as I was considering my vote and what I do on the Planning Commission, it's just which of those two is better. Made a great point. You guys would have voted for Erda Estates or Tilly Village. I think it's probably also fair to say that if it was just this, and you didn't have the back of Erda Estates, nobody would vote for just this as it is if it was brand new, right? So it's just between, as Daryl's pointed out, between Erda Estates and Tilly Village. And the biggest difference, there's other small ones, and Craig and I have talked about some of those, but the biggest difference is, just as Daryl pointed out, density versus commercial, right? And what we value more. And so I just want to kind of paint my view on that. On the Erda Estates and Tilly Village plan, if you draw a line at 8,000 square feet lots, which is about 5.5 lots per acre, there are 100, which are those townhomes, it's the retirement community, that are under 8,000 square feet. On the new plan, there are 271 that are smaller than 8,000 square feet, or 8,000 square feet or smaller, which is a lot. That's a lot of density. When you think about what 8,000 square feet is, a kill is on a 5-acre lot. You could theoretically divide 5 acres into 27 8,000 square foot lots. That wouldn't include roads and all that stuff, I understand, but you can imagine being on your back porch and seeing 27 lots. That's a lot, right? So I think there's a lot more density than you're seeing because it's not spread out into Tilly Village and it's pulled across. The other side of that is commercial, right? We do get a lot more commercial with Copper Cove. No question about it. I think that you guys probably know better than anybody that the sales tax that we're receiving is huge from online sales. The brick and mortar there's still some there, and as we develop there will be some, but I think the way the future, I see Amazon and UPS going up and down the street all the time. Not to mention that type of area, most of it, I can't say all of it, but I can't even say most. A lot of it's going to be doctor's offices and dentists and law offices that don't sell stuff, and there's not going to be sales tax. So I think that there's less of a commercial benefit and there's a lot more density than we think. Now, the question you have is just where you fall and how important the density versus commercial is to you, and that's what you're voting on tonight. Does that make sense? One other thing that I know is important to Kale, so I'll bring it up, is oftentimes we think smaller lots means more affordable housing. So the people that are just graduating high school or coming home from missions or grandkids can move into there. There's nothing in here that says it has to be affordable. They can build 3-story houses and make $1 million houses and put them on that small of a lot, right? So there's nothing that says it has to be affordable. Daryl made it clear to the Planning Commission that their intent, and I don't know, he's not tied to this, he's not committed, but their intent is to sell it. So no matter what Daryl thinks it could be built there, it's whoever he sells it to, they can build whatever they want. That makes sense. I had 1 or 2 small other points. I'm just about done. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. As far as fitting the general plan, the commercial shape does fit it better. I agree with Daryl 100%. My concern is that we have drawn medium intensity, low intensity areas for housing. And this is high intent. We're going from high intensity to super high intensity, right? So I would argue that it's the opposite. It fits the general plan less. And the only other thing point I wanted to make is one of the things that Daryl mentioned is everybody, from his recollection, doesn't want more houses. We want to limit growth. I don't know how you guys feel. I can only speak for myself. That's not my intent at all. I would welcome growth. I would welcome as many people as want to move here. I love people. I want to be around them. I just think it should be on reasonable sized lots. Half acre, 1 acre, 5 acre, depending on where you're at. And so for me, and I'm just one person, I don't even have a vote, but the trade-off of the density and those smaller lots is not worth what you get in commercial.
Do you know right off the top of your head? Because I seen there was a lot of like 0.18, 0.23, very few I mean, quarter acre and less all over this.
Right. Are you talking about Copper Cove or Erda Estates?
Whichever one this is.
That looks like Copper Cove, yep.
No, that's Erda Estates.
It's Erda's.
Yes, and Erda Estates is not the great, there's 100 that are less than 8,000 square feet. I could look it up. Daryl would know better than me, honestly. But I don't know off the top of my head. That's all I have. And there's a bunch of things on the agenda from the planning commission, so I'll hang out in case you guys have questions.
Hey, can I talk about this too?
Please.
Sheldon Birch. I actually feel slightly differently than Corey, at least I think. I think that some higher density along the SR 36 corridor is probably a smart move as far as the way that our city develops long term. I think one of the real questions becomes when. When is the right time for that to happen, and whether now is the right time to get started with that or not, and whether this development is the one that we want to do it. But of course, we're not voting for or against, as has already been stated. We're choosing between two options that both have some high density. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong there. Regarding the commercial property, it's been sold to us as the value into the city. That if we go with a larger commercial property, we may have the potential of bigger box stores in the future with more sales tax revenue. Those are all positives. It's also possible, and this seems to be a pattern that we've seen perhaps in some other places around the state, that this wider piece of commercial property sits vacant for a couple of years, and then we get a request to put high-density residential on that commercial property instead. That's something that we could face in the future, and perhaps the not too distant future if a wider commercial zone is approved. Primarily because commercial zoning doesn't come with an approved density, and so it leaves that option on the table. I don't know what's right or wrong here, but I'm at least wanted to bring up a couple of these issues and thoughts that might be worth discussing. I would say that we really ought to be considering if this is what we choose to do, we at least better make sure that trails and parks are included and appropriate for the number of homes that are going in there, and that they are completed as part of the approved development.
Hi, Sheldon. Thank you. Who's next? This is public comment, so on any topic.
Guys, you know how much I love this. Write my name here. I'm Hallie Mayturn, and I am co-owner in RTM Trucking with my husband. Again, I know on the planning and zoning, they had asked why the owner wasn't up there, and I explained that, like, my husband's a man of few words, and I'm kind of a wife of many, so I'm up here. I got voted up to come up and talk to you guys. The reason why I'm up here is just, I know you're all aware that we went in front of the planning and zoning, and they all voted no against our business being at our house there. And I guess when I went there and I went to the decision, and you guys, I didn't realize I had to talk ahead of time like this. I thought you guys said how you felt, and then I could talk. One thing I wanted to make clear that I think was misconstrued was the fact that we call the building a shop. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Idaho, and our barn was for the hay and for our animals, and the shop was where we parked our farm equipment, and that's just how I grew up. So I guess but a lot of people could misconstrue that to think shop means mechanic shop, right? Travis was a mechanic for 22 years, but he's done. His back can't handle it anymore. We have, and I should have brought with them because they'd be stacked up to here of invoices since he started, and it kills them to have to send out all of these trucks if anything happens to him. But he just can't do it. He can't do both. He can't be a mechanic and a driver. It'll just burn the candle at both ends. And so that was one thing that was said at the meeting, was that we were going to be running like a shop out of there. And I wanted to clarify that it's not going to be a shop. There's not going to be trucks coming in all the time to get worked on. That's not at all. The reason why we built that was to store our trucks in the garage, I guess you could say. It was to store them in there so that they were not out in front of our property or in the back, and that so if somebody was to drive by, it just looks like a barn. Our building is going to be a very nice building. I mean, it's a $400,000 building. We've taken out our savings to pay for this. We've put a lot of money into it already, and we did that under the impression that we were given, I don't know if that's the right word to say, impression, but that we were given our business license. And our business license clearly on the application said commercial. And on our business license, it clearly states on there our dump truck business, and then we haul earth products. It's going to be a very nice building. I don't know if any of you guys know Patrick War, who lives on off of Heidi Way and Bryan Road and Heidi Way. Well, he lives over there. I actually went and knocked on his door and asked him who built his building, because I really liked that it looked like a barn, not a business. And he was really nice. And the guy that we have building it is the same guy, and I think it's going to look really good. It's not going to look like a commercial building or anything. All we're asking is that we can come to some kind of a mutual agreement, because Travis left his job of 22 years. He was with the union, he was vested, he was everything in that to do this. We got the business license, we did everything like we should have, and now I feel like that it was taken away from us. Do you know what I mean? Like by the fact that they did not renew our business license because it's not permittable in an RR5. We're clearly just asking for we're on the columns where it has 10 acres and there's a C for conditional, to make RR5 conditional, that if somebody wants to do something on their property, that they come in front of you guys and ask for permission to get a conditional use permit. But in our situation, we have put a lot of money. Had we known we couldn't do this at the beginning, and we weren't given our business license, and we weren't given all of this, we would have probably went and purchased a small commercial lot and then built that building on the lot and parked our trucks in there for that. But we wanted it close to our house because we wanted the security. We don't want to have to go get in our trucks and all the fuel's drained out of it, or parts are stripped off of it, or vandalized or something like that. And so that's really why we wanted it close to our house. But if you guys could please think of anything that you guys want to ask, if we can. I've ran by a couple of you about some different options, and I don't know if I should bring that up now, or if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves. But if we can come up with some kind of a mutual plan, we don't want our neighbors to hate us, and we really felt that way at that planning and zoning meeting. It was horrible, and it made us feel terrible, because nobody has came up to us and said, Travis and Hallie, this is bothering me. Nobody has came up to us, not one person. But when they got in front of that meeting, my gosh, they were mad. And it hurts. And it hurts because this is our livelihood, and this is everything that we've dreamt of doing, and we did everything right, thinking that we were doing everything right. But it's been wrong in our neighbors' eyes. And so if we can somehow come to an agreement amongst you guys with us, and we can make this work, I sure would be appreciative. And that's all. Do you have a question?
I think we can ask questions as we need to,
Okay.
whenever we need to.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Anybody wanting to speak online?
Anybody watching online?
No.
Anybody else from the audience?
I don't have a very good voice right now. We're going to make this short and sweet. I agree with Howie. I attended that meeting that she was talking about, and I think there was a lot of confusion within the neighbors and within what we were ultimately asking to have done. I live on the street. We are doing the same thing. We have a building we've already had approved. It's been all done, and we have a conditional use permit. Granted, it was kind of grandfathered in. I've been doing my business for 20 years. But I agree that it should at least be an option to be able to be taken into consideration as a base by base. It's all individual. So many different businesses or there's so many different aspects to so many different businesses. So it really does need to be put on a case by case situation. That's my opinion on that, but that's all I wanted to say.
All right, anyone else?
Close the public comment. Second.
Moved and seconded, we close public comment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We'll move on to meeting minutes. We've got meeting minutes from October 26, 2023. Chair moves that we approve these minutes.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're going to turn the time over to Terry.
Okay, before I get into the other nitty gritty, there's a few things I want to get. This is the time of the year where I'm getting hammered with a bunch of risk assessments and fraud deals and the thing for our insurance and all that stuff. And one of the things that I want to see if John can write up, because one's on a point scale. So like everything that we do, if you can get a yes in it, you get so many points. And I think the higher the points, then the lower your liability is going to be. And one of these that should be simple for us to do, and it's worth like 20 points, is that we write something, and this is the way it's spelled out. It says our employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior. And so if you could come up with something like that, that'd give us 20 points on that. It may lower our, I mean, it's kind of common sense, but I guess it's better if it's
You're assuming we're going to sign.
in writing. I don't have to worry about you signing it. Then there's also a couple of little things that we can talk about later when we have more time, because I think this is going to be a little longer deal. I'll save it for maybe the December 5th meeting.
Okay.
Now we'll get into the finances. From the last meeting, from the 27th of October until today, we had a deposit of $25,384.02 into checking. And our checks written, starting with check number 1189, is clerk salary. This includes the back pay and all that other stuff. $4,513.59. Accounting, $1,750. Legal services, $5,000. City planner, $2,750. Energy savers refund, $350, and that refund was because they were charged a building permit and they weren't in the city, so we had to refund them that money. Then clerk salary from 10/28 to 11/10, $1,306.56. Ensign engineering, $3,108. Payroll tax federal, $2,192.02. Payroll tax state, $377. Clerk salary, 11/11 to 11/24, $1,306.55. CVE tech for October, $309.58. And Scott's reelection, $3,032. I mean, the Twilla County primary election, $3,032. A total of $25,995.30. On the credit cards, we had a charge of $882 for our Microsoft monthly and Adobe monthly for $21.39 for $30.21 paid on the 21st of
Sorry,
November.
Terry, how much was the Google?
Google,
What did you say? What was the 800?
$8.82 for Microsoft monthly.
Sorry.
And then $21.39 for Adobe monthly for $30.21. And then we did a GoDaddy renewal for the premium for $64.07, which was paid on the 27th. And we did, just for everybody's, we did get a check for the first portion of the property tax that we've never got before. So, but the bigger one will be next month. The first one was just prepaid and up to that point, so it was like $29,000. So the 10th of next month we'll be get the majority that comes in November. But I don't know if everybody's looked at your taxes, and property tax isn't a massive income. I don't know if you look at, I can just look at mine, and it was like out of $2,000, less than 200 came to the city. So it's not a real money maker. So we're doing okay, and don't worry about, we did budget into legal fees, so don't put that as a hindrance that you don't think we can do anything because we don't have any money, because we did budget that in this time. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you, Terry. Any questions for the treasurer, the councilman? All right, we'll move on to proposed ordinance 23-11. Amendment to Land Use Code Table 15-5-3.2, Home-Based Business Ordinance. Travis Minturn has submitted a business license application for RTM Trucking LLC to be located at 3050 North Bronzewood Circle in an RR5 zoning district. This application is for home-based business to be allowed as a conditional use in the RR5 zoning district to accommodate their trucking company. They have constructed a large shop and to place their equipment in. Home-based business is currently not allowed in an RR5 zoning district.
Thank you, Chairman and council members. As the chairman mentioned, this is an applicant-driven code change request to allow for a home-based business as a conditional use in an RR5 zoning district. What a home-based business allows is it allows for up to 10 outside employees, and it allows you to use any portion of your home, structure on your lot, or any portion of your lot to run your business. Currently, we allow for our low-impact businesses, which are permitted, and then we have home occupations, which must be contained within the home, and they only allow 1 or 2 employees. I don't remember off the top of my head. So it's a significant increase in the business use allowed. This would bring into compliance the Materns trucking business. I'm not sure if Caleb Knoblo is still doing his business out of his home. I believe he moved to commercial, but it would make him legal. Royal dumpsters, those are the types of uses that you're going to start seeing more of that currently are not allowed in an RR5 that would be allowed if this change were to be approved. Planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission examine all the requests thoroughly in making this decision. This is one that will impact every RR5 zoning district if approved. And Planning Commission made a 6-0 unfavorable recommendation with the finding that the requested use may cause negative impacts to the rural residential 5-acre zoning district. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I got one. Can you, is it legal to tailor one for just be specific for this applicant? So like, if the general thing says there's 10, but for this one, you just want to say just 1 or 2, is that a possibility, or do you have to go with the full meal deal?
That is something we could do with the conditional use permit, is place conditions that limit those items. The home-based business for an RR5 is pretty broad. Really need to take into consideration if you want those types of businesses on any RR5 zoning district lot, or if you believe that it would be better suited for our city to make home-based businesses, the home-based business definition in an RR5 zoning district a little more narrow than it is for an RR10. We could do that as well, which would help with that, what you're asking. And that would make that apply citywide.
So we're taking the proposal as it was presented to the planning and zoning,
Yes, because this is an applicant-driven request.
right, but we're taking that from Tooele County codes? Where does,
It is in our current code.
This is, yeah.
Yep. It is in the Erda City codes.
I mean, the proposed change,
The proposed change, they just want change to Erda City. Tooele County does not allow home-based businesses in RR5. This would be unique to Erda City.
okay, so,
Look in the ordinance, that's where the change is.
right, but where did we come up with the way it was written as opposed to what you said? If it was defined more narrowly?
That's just what the applicant requested. What was brought to you is exactly what the applicant submitted.
Okay, so that's where it came from.
Yes. And we did hash this out in Tooele County for many months. Craig can recall. And it didn't get a resolution there, so now it comes to you to make the decision. Another thing to keep in mind, I know this is not specific to a trucking business, but it is a trucking business that made the application, is if you have designated truck routes or intend to have designated truck routes, that will impact where these types of businesses can be located.
And we do have designated truck routes.
Just trucks speed up roads. Even when you're building a subdivision. I mean, you've got the trucks that come in and you have to allow them during that point in time because the roads typically aren't yours yet.
Could you expand a little bit on if something's allowed with a conditional use, what kind of leeway you have there? How
Absolutely.
you deny them, if you can deny them?
Good question. We should do a conditional use primer for the planning commission and the council. What the purpose of a conditional use is to mitigate any adverse impacts that the proposed use may have on neighboring properties. So they have to come, if the neighbor comes before you or we identify an adverse impact, then we can come up with reasonable conditions to mitigate that adverse impact. But those are the only conditions that we can impose, are reasonable conditions to mitigate an adverse impact. If there are no conditions that could be placed to mitigate the impact, then a conditional use can be denied. But if there are reasonable conditions that can be placed, a conditional use cannot be denied.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what you just said is, if in this case, reasonable conditions can be in place, then we give them the conditional use permit. if this were to pass.
Well, you're amending the code, they're gonna have to come back for a conditional.
To the plan.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. But
And
I
then here's
guess
my problem
I
with
guess I don't see, I guess I don't see the negative side to that. How has that become a negative thing?
Having it allowed as a conditional use?
Yeah.
I think.
I
the
can't
point
say
she
whether
was
it's
making
positive
is
or
that
negative.
the home-based business definition is very broad. And so maybe the fear is that other types of businesses that we don't want to see in RR5s are gonna now come in droves applying for conditional uses. Is that kind of spelled
That's a
out?
concern, that you'll have more commercial uses in an RR5 zoning district. If that is the desire of Erda City, then, you know,
I
let's
think it'll
move
keep the
forward in
planning-
that direction.
If it passes, I think the planning commission and city council will be a little bit busier. But I think keeping in mind that they can be denied outright if no mitigating factors can be met.
They have to prove that there is an adverse impact. So coming in and saying, this is going to decrease my property values if you allow this to happen. Exactly, that is not, unless they come in with proof. Like if they can come in with appraisals and all of that kind of stuff to prove that it will, then you can
I
consider.
get some clarification. When I was first told about it or heard about it, the way I envisioned it was like 5 trucks here and they'd pull out of the deal and be gone for the day and then come right back and be done. It was just like every morning out and then at the end of the day, they're back.
Correct.
And then I've heard though that now it's like they're back and forth all day long because you're hauling stuff in and out of your property and stuff like that.
Well, what had happened was before the planning and zoning meeting, we had 2 of our neighbors that wanted product. And so, but not just our trucks, but several trucks were coming in and out, up and down, but they were dropping product at customers that were down at the end of the street and bringing them dirt and stuff to their house. And so but that was kind of a one-off few days of.
You also do know that trucks are kind of like airplanes. It's almost like for every couple miles of running, there's a couple miles of servicing. So to say there'd be no working on them is not accurate either.
I guess what I'm getting at is that Travis has full capability to do anything, an engine rebuild, anything, tear that truck down and rebuild it from the ground up. He's not gonna be doing that. Now, to say he wouldn't be doing anything like changing air filters, changing tires, checking brakes, stuff like that, but any major rebuilds, he's gotta send out, because that's like, we need to get that truck back on the road, and that's where I'm saying he's a driver now, he's not a mechanic. So that's what I was getting.
But what I'm trying to bring up is, I know of a place that has almost the exact same thing. The guys leave in the morning and then they come back at night. But on the weekends, you got generators, compressors, and all that working on their equipment to get them going the next week and stuff.
Next week.
So and this is out in the open. It's not in a shed or garage.
Yeah, and anything being done, and that's what we want to talk to you about, was the fact that we built that shop so that the trucks would be parked in there. So that's where they're going to start up in the morning, where now they're out in the open, right? And so that noise is there. Now it's going to be in the shop, and then they're just going to take out and go directly from there, and then come in, park in the shop, and park it. And so having that big shop there is definitely, if anything's done, it's going to be in the shop, not outside. There's not going to be that noise factor.
So one thing you could change for home-based business in an RR5 is that it can only be, or that it has to be contained within a structure on the property. That's one thing we could put in there.
We can lower the number of, didn't you say something like 10 employees?
Yeah, and I would recommend you do that as part of the ordinance, not through the conditional use process.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
We don't have
Crazy, huh? That's why I was like, the home-based business it's pretty broad. Sheldon can run his pharmacy from his house if he wants to. It's very
I was thinking I'm already doing that.
But we can restrict hours of operation with a conditional use permit, number of employees. I would recommend that, if that is a concern of yours, Councilman, that you put the definition in the RR5 that it must be within an enclosed structure on the property. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't have to. That would help mitigate that.
What authority or power do we have to create roads? Like if we says, okay, instead of going this route, what if we had a road come from here to like a shorter cut to Drew Bay?
The city can build roads within the city wherever they have
Wouldn't
right
have,
of
like,
way.
well, somebody maybe wouldn't have to drive through a neighborhood, they just cut straight across or something like that.
We cannot require the applicant to build that road because it's an off-site improvement.
But we would.
There you go.
Good.
We would if we could. Absolutely. We have,
So what Terry's talking about is, what if they had access at the back
You could require them
to Drew Bay Road, not use
Yes, you could.
the cul-de-sac road? I thought we had that ability. It's our road.
I'm just making sure, as an option.
So,
So please keep in mind, this is not just specific to this application. This is a change for the code, a change to the code for the whole city.
so I'd like to comment a little bit here. I have a lot of faith in planning commission and in the future city council to be able to handle conditional use applications that come in. I also think that, I think it would be reasonable to have a further, maybe further restrict the abilities of a home-based business in an RR5 as opposed to an RR10. So define that in code. I think those, but I guess what I'm saying is because those conditions can be applied on a one-by-one basis, I don't see that we necessarily, if we wanted to vote yes on this tonight, I wouldn't see that as we need to wait and make these definitions before we go ahead and make this conditional, because we can do it on a one-off basis until we can get the code revised as we see fit to further narrow down what is possible.
But we could also send it back to the planning and zoning to come up with those stuff too, right?
Or if you know what you want them to be, you could make your motion with those amendments. To get it.
That sounds reasonable to me.
You're saying as part of this application and part of this vote, we can amend the home-based business definition for R5. Correct. All right. Well, then as I see it, from my perspective, we've got a couple of options. We can table this and circle the wagons on what kind of restrictions we want to see on the RR5 as far as the RR10. Kick this can down the road a little bit, then have our official vote. Although we are limited as to our timing on this. Do you know what she's got an application, the state's gonna require us to have a decision within a certain amount of time.
Only if she requests, then you have 45 days.
Only if she requests it.
Yes, because we're processing it, we're moving it along. If you table it, you've got to let the applicant know, we're going to table it for 2 weeks.
So we're okay to table it a little bit if we want to.
Yes.
I want to get Craig's idea on this. I haven't heard anything about what you have to say.
This far into a meeting, you haven't heard anything from me and you're missing me already?
It just don't seem right. I don't want it to sneak up on me.
The way this is written, I would have to vote against it. I would have no choice. could not, in good conscience, allow commercial and industrial uses within 10 employees in RR5 zones in subdivisions. I cannot get myself there. As much as I feel for these applicants, it opens it up for the entire city to have industrial and commercial uses in the subdivisions. And I've learned that it's hard to deny a conditional use. And while we like to think that everyone could come up with reasonable things, it doesn't always happen. If we rewrote it and strictly defined how it could look, I could maybe get on board, but the way this is, I can't. So I would either say deny it and start the process over and have the planning commission build it, or we table it and come up with our thoughts and ideas of what it should look like. But I would vote against.
What kind of fees were paid on this application?
$800, I'll bet.
It's a planning and zoning deal, right? $800.
Yes, it was 800.
I think if we're gonna consider this, I think we table it, make the amendments we wanna see, and in the hopes that we have something we can pass in the future. And not abusing our citizen, making them reapply for.
I would not have a citizen reapply. If this goes back to be redone, I think it should go back through the city process. They've already paid.
You can kick it back to the planning commission regardless, if that's the route you want to go.
So I was gonna
You don't have
ask
to
Corey
deny it.
if that was gonna be a waste of time, or if
You can kick anything back to the planning commission if you want them to rework it.
I think kicking.
I will go for anything that comes before you
I
tonight.
see,
If you want any of that to kick
that back to the,
back, you sure can.
with our,
Well, we can't, but the staff could.
I'm with Jess. I think we table this for a definite period of time, like, when's our next meeting?
5th.
5th, it's in 5 days.
Well, it might be
I don't think we have.
Be the one
time
after that.
notice for that.
Another one on the 14th unless we postpone.
we put a definite time on it, and we narrow this down, and then we bring it right back to here, rather than send the Materns back for another go around
So
of.
Scott, do you want the council to work on
Yeah,
amending this?
yeah.
Or do you want planning commission?
I think the council should do it.
Okay.
And I can come up with some recommendations to send to you as well. Would like, it's up to you.
Only if they're good.
I'm not promising anything to you.
They're,
Recommendations.
I'm fine either way.
well, I'll make a motion that we table this until our second meeting in December, which will either be the 14th or later in December, but a meeting in December.
We got the 28th, the other scheduled.
Either the 14th or the 28th.
Let's go the 14th.
I don't think there's a chance I'm gonna be here on the 28th.
I'm gonna be in Idaho.
I won't be here the 14th, so you'll probably want to do it the 14th.
Thanks, Terry.
Does that tell us how you're gonna vote?
I know.
I think Terry's in favor of this.
And maybe we see but with recommendations of the attorney and the staff of what this could be. And if we have it ready by the 14th, we'll put it on that agenda. If not, it goes on the 28th.
I'll second
That's my
that.
motion.
I'll drive back to my
Just so
Idaho.
I can clearly understand that with the motion,
Yes.
the motion to table this until the second meeting in December with the recommendation of the attorney and staff.
With modifications to this.
From the attorney and the staff.
The amendments to the actual ordinance.
Yeah, the wording and the ordinance.
We'll just take the table and we'll leave home-based business with the R10 and A's as C, and then we'll do another one right below it, home-based business with some stipulations for the RR5 with the C.
I think that makes sense.
Do you guys have any other questions for me? Nothing I can answer.
I'll just say thank you, Howie. You've been through a lot.
And I apologize for the planning and zoning meeting.
After discussing this and also with you, I just think that the things that you have planned and have already done sound very reasonable. And I personally think it works and works well. I drove through your neighborhood today. I was impressed by the appearance of your property, if I may say so. Yeah, if anything, what you're doing has to be increasing the value of what is in your neighborhood, and I mean that. All right, we have a motion and a second, and is our recorder clear on this mud on what we're doing?
Yeah, so did Scott or Jess second it?
I seconded
Jess. That's what I thought, but you looked at Scott, so I was like, did I hear it wrong? Okay. Okay, we're good. Roll call vote.
Okay. Move in a second to table this to the second meeting in December. And pending the recommendations from our attorney and staff. Larry, how do you vote?
Yay, verily.
Cal?
Yes.
Yes, Greg? Yes. And Scott?
Yes. I think that's the first time he's ever voted yay, Barry.
I've done present once.
I know.
It's a unanimous vote. Let's move on.
It isn't for you, okay? Okay.
Right, proposed ordinance 23-12 approving a zoning amendment by development agreement for Copper Cove Development area approximately 3800 North Highway 36. Daryl Anderson is requesting a zoning map amendment by development agreement for Copper Cove zoning district. This amendment this amendment allows for 374 residential lots of varying sizes with commercial uses and open space. Utah code allows for zoning by development agreement as long as it goes through the same process as a zoning map amendment. The property was previously approved as the Erda Estates and Tilby Village PUDs by Tooele County. The developer has requested to combine both PUDs into one planned community by development agreement.
Thank you, Chairman and Council. As you saw earlier in Mr. Anderson's presentation, this combines the residential units from 2 approved PUDs into the area of one of the approved PUDs and opens up more commercial area for the Erda City. There were 2 concepts that were presented to the Planning Commission. One had a 30-foot buffer that the Planning Commission had discussed at one point in being a trail. The concept did not show that, but that had been discussed. The other did not have the buffer, and it had more, or had the property from the buffer spread throughout the lots, so the lots were a little bit larger. Not much, but a little bit. The Planning Commission went back and forth. They had made 3 motions, 4 motions. Their preferred concept was the one without the buffer and the property added to the lots. However, Planning Commission ultimately in the end made an unfavorable recommendation 4-2, right? 2-4, 5-1, okay. Here, so thank you. I was online for that meeting and it was a little difficult. The lot sizes range from 4,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet for this development. You will see in your staff report, doing zoning by development agreement, they basically get to dictate what their lot sizes are going to be, what their setbacks are going to be, what their lot coverage is going to be. That's all part of the development agreement. And their attorney and our attorney worked together on the development agreement. John asked for some recent changes that were made. The updated development agreement should be in your packet. So it has been vetted by our attorney and is lawful. As far as the general plan, meeting the general plan, the commercial does meet the general plan. I don't want it to sound for or against the density because to me, the density makes sense, but the general plan does call for medium intensity residential, but that is not defined. So the planning, there's members of the planning commission that perceive the density as high intensity density. The applicant believes it's medium intensity. It's ultimately up to this body to determine if the density requested in the development agreement is medium intensity and meets the requirements of the general plan. That's up to you guys to decide. There was a traffic study that was done for Erda Estates and Tilby Village, which shows that today the roads are sufficient. Build out, they will not be. So as phases are built, we will have to have that traffic study updated to see what transportation improvements need to be done to facilitate the traffic that this development will bring. Developer. Yeah. Do you have anything else? I will change my recommendation 5-1, Corey, you said? Okay.
Rochelle, am I seeing this right? Where's the park? Where's the parks?
It's all residential and commercial now.
And some agriculture.
The agricultural lots are actually their stormwater retention. There's nothing for them to discharge to.
Big enough for soccer fields and things like that.
Possibly, yeah, there's some that are about 10 acres, but their desire is to keep them as private property and use them as agricultural lots along with having them be their stormwater retention facilities.
So this is really just doing 2 subdivisions into one. Why, I don't know, it might just be me, but why do they call it a planned community? Is it gonna be a metropolis on its own, or is it gonna be part of Erda City?
What a planned community does is it allows for varying lot sizes, varying styles of homes and lots, along with some, you can put open space mixed in there. Commercial is what this one has. That's in your typical subdivision in an R18 zoning district, you're going to have a bunch of 8,000 square foot lots and roads. Is really all you're going to get. In a planned community, you're going to have varying lot sizes and various amenities can be placed in them.
Planned community thing for because we don't have that in our ordinance.
Correct. So they're creating
an ordinance.
Well, it is by development agreement because the legislature now allows them to do that. Allows development agreement.
Understand that part of it. So now we're gonna have a planned community ordinance.
Without nope, you are not. You will have the ordinance that John has written to go with this rezone and the development agreement. That's what's going to drive the development in this project.
Then we're stuck with the limit, like there's some that says a 55-foot height. Ours is just 35, but I guess it was approved by the county for.
It's not approved yet. That's what they're requesting in the development agreement. That's up to you guys. That's what their request. So I would encourage you to look through those charts and the development agreement. Make sure you agree with all of that before you approve the development agreement if you're inclined to do so. And to Daryl's point, when he spoke with you guys, the reason for the townhomes at the rear of the project is they were intended to be a 55 older community, so they were pulling them away from the highway. But he is correct. You typically, if you're not doing that type of a multi-residential development and it's just a multi-residential development for anybody, non-age restricted is the way to put it, you do want them closer to your transportation corridors.
You have any 65 and older?
Just for clarification, this building height is 55 feet for multi-residential, but this development agreement does not allow for any multi-residential. It's all single-family lots.
Get out.
So, yeah, there's also no 5-acre lots or 1-acre lots in this either. So,
They're all smaller,
oh yeah, they're all much smaller than
way smaller.
Those are what were requested by the developer.
How many square feet in an acre?
43,560.
So there's half acre.
Well, there's some that are 0.23, 0.18, 0.25.
Oh, there's some tiny lots, a bunch of them, but that's not my real concern. All right.
So I have a question. Couldn't the retention ponds be a park? Seemed like I've seen that other places.
They could, would have to change the development agreement.
What did you say,
Was that
Derek?
a question for me? I mean,
Well, yeah, that was a question for you. Is that,
Rochelle, by all means, was accurate in her statement, in that those retention, well, let me back up. When we went to Tooele County for the approval of this, they were adamant that they wanted agricultural preservation ground. It was what the Planning and Zoning Commission was very focused on at that time, so we put that in there. And so that's why it's always been agricultural preservation. The engineer says, we gotta have somewhere for the water to go. That's a good place for it. There has been, talking with Erda City's engineer, he suggested, hey, let's keep that all together instead of spreading it out like the Planning and Zoning Commission is, because in the future, it could be used for agriculture. It could be used for parks. Because Erda City has no Parks and Recs department or anything like that, we were in no way trying to burden Erda City. And so we have said, we will maintain the ownership of that ground, use it for agriculture and our stormwater. In the future, if it made sense to have that be Parks and Rec, we would absolutely be open to that.
I think that's Parks and Recs.
But we sure didn't want to present that up front because we knew that Erda City would be going, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want to be responsible for parks at this
For me,
point.
it's the opposite. These kids need somewhere to go roam.
I agree.
but this makes a certain amount of sense. If we don't want to park there next month or even next year, but if it was an ag preserve, and an ag preserve, it cannot be built on, and it would have to be dedicated to that, because normally an ag reserve, the owner of the property can release that at his will.
Well, and so a couple of thoughts. One is because we need it for our stormwater, it's not going to be built on in the future. Okay, and so it's got to be saved for stormwater, and then we can graze it for a while. And if we are completely open to putting in the development agreement that it can be used for agriculture or Parks and Recs in the future. I mean, we would love to have it for Parks and Recs, but I guess up to this conversation, the message we've got from Erda City, and maybe we've read it wrong,
I
was
just can't believe the Planning Commission.
the Planning Commission's absolute desire was that we chop all of that up and make little small stormwater retention areas throughout the entire project. That was absolutely the direction.
Like the rest of Erda is built out with the,
Yeah.
next to the road.
And I talked with our engineer, which happens to be your engineer, and he says, it makes no sense. Why would we possibly do that? Let's keep it all there so that in the future, if it can be a soccer field, which you're talking 10 acres, that's a big park.
A couple of soccer fields.
You put a whole lot more than a couple soccer fields.
To require parks, either Erda City they dedicate the property to Erda City and Erda City maintains them, or Erda City requires the developer to create an HOA and build the park and the HOA maintain them. Those are your only options that, John may have some more.
Well, I thought the
outside
city
ones,
still
but-
kept, what was it, on for the retention that we kept,
Yeah, we keep an easement on some
Easement.
water retentions.
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
We
could
can still
change or-
require an HOA to maintain it.
We can.
Our code requires them to maintain it.
And
We do not maintain retention facilities per our code.
We've always intended on retaining it. Never,
They just
never
have to
us.
give you an easement, yeah, when they subdivide it. We're not to the subdivision stage yet, so.
So we'll just keep this discussion going, but
So Corey, is
if we
that,
move this forward tonight, can we get these amendments put in to this approval? Do we need to work on a development agreement first?
These are going to be development agreement amendments. I believe our attorney and the applicant's attorney need to make those.
So are we approving the
together.
development agreement tonight, or are we?
Both. You have to do both this way.
we were just making a decision, we didn't have to approve.
We're approving a zoning.
Yes.
Touche.
By development agreement.
In other words,
But we can do it with conditions.
I'd like to listen to Corey first to see if he agrees with what Daryl was saying about the retentions. Was that your sole purpose?
You know, I wasn't there for every meeting. One of them, I know we discussed at length when I was in Africa, so it could have been during that meeting. I don't remember that discussion. I know that for me, I wanted to take as much property as possible, not put it into parks, but put it into lots to make the lots bigger, not necessarily just small parks. That was just me, though I can't speak for the whole commission, and I wasn't there for the part of the meetings.
All right, thank.
It was on the one that he wasn't there. And you can check with Jake, or Rochelle probably even remember.
That's kind of a conflict anyway, isn't it? Both of us having the
It's
same.
everything in this county.
Yeah, but when we have a conflict, we have to go with Aqua or one other engine.
When we went back and forth, there was a 50-foot open space buffer, and then it went down to 30, and we had members of the planning commission that wanted that to be a meandering trail. We had other members that wanted it put throughout the lot, spread throughout the lots, so there were various.
There was
There was not a lot of consensus in what the planning commission wanted, other than an unfavorable recommendation, and that took 4 motions to get.
okay,
Is this one we're tabling too, to let them work some details out?
you can make a motion. I would like to not table this. That's just me.
Can we pass it under conditions like Craig said?
Can you suggest what those conditions might sound like?
Development agreement.
I've got a list of them.
I would
Greg's got a
recommend,
list,
I
so
recommend that it come back. If you want to make some changes to it, we're gonna have to wrestle through how that property is gonna be transferred to the city.
let's listen to Craig's list and we may.
Craig's list?
He comes out with these things very slowly.
I'll start by saying, I like this, and it fixes some problems we had. Part of, when we did a PID, one of the conditions we put in for being a part of a PID was you had to come in with a development agreement. We did that largely to fix Erda Estates and Tilby Village. If they wanted to be in that, they had to come to us with a development agreement. That was part of our design that me and John and the PID committee, we did that intentionally to force this. The planning and zoning was split on it. At the end, there was only 6 of them there. It was 3-3. 3 of them liked it and 3 of them didn't. There was literally no consensus on who wanted what, but I'll tell you things that I would like. I think if you're going to have 374 residents, they need somewhere to recreate. They need a trail and they need a park. I would suggest one condition be there be a minimum 2-acre park in the center of this development. And if some of these other outside ones were going to be parks also, that would be fine. I would suggest that the park in the center be completed at 50% build out, which is at 187 units. The first park has to be completed when it gets there. There is an automatic cap of residential in here, but in conversations I've had, they said, what about the commercial? What if they come back in to do a short-term rental? Part of the development agreement I'd like to see is that would not be allowed in the commercial zone. This gives 374
You're
units.
just prohibiting short-term rentals or other types of things too?
Any type of, not a hotel. I mean, if someone comes in and wants to put a nice hotel in, that's fine, but a short-term rental where you rent a room for a month, and that is not considered a resident, I think that ought to be put in the development agreement that that's not allowed. Sorry, Darrell.
No, I'm fine with that.
The staff said public sewer and water system, which is almost obvious, but should go in there. And then I would remove the multi-residential standards out of there at all. There's no 55 feet. This will all be single-family homes, 35-foot height, and the setbacks that are in there.
What's the 55 feet?
So in the development agreement, it's just a table that they took and said, these are our setbacks, and the table had everything on it.
Do you want to look at it?
You know, Terry says if it's in there, it's a possibility, well, let's remove it, take it out.
So you're saying if a 55-foot setback is a possibility?
No, 55-foot high building. There's no multi-residential in here, so let's take the table out and end any confusion that it's there.
I got it now.
Take that out of the table. I think that was, the trail. I prefer, there's two concepts. I actually prefer the one with the open space, but instead of a 50-foot wide down one side, I would like to see that go around the entire residential area, so it's a loop. That'd be a 3-mile loop that someone could get on with a bike, go around, someone could walk around. It would connect with the future connecting streets, would already connect to it. So I would prefer to see a trail all the way around the residential.
Speaking of trails, you know, they're trying to do a trail system for the whole county that connects each city and stuff like that.
Yeah, I could see in the future this trail system connecting to the Rabbit Lane Trail when that develops out. But if we don't have a trail system in there, it can never connect. So on a development agreement, these are the kinds of things that I get a lot of leverage and can put in even though it's not in our code. And understanding when I say this, what I just said is going to cost them a minimum of $500,000, probably $750,000.
Aren't they covered?
What's that?
Aren't they part of the PID?
They can apply to be part of the PID if they
Part
choose,
of that infrastructure.
but
Oh, they're within the diagram, so they
yeah,
can't.
the PID won't be able to pay for
Right.
water rights, several of these things, but
So Craig,
that's where I'm at.
was any part of your items on your list have to do with building parks and have the residents here maintain them?
I honestly don't care if it's an HOA or if they wind up going to the city in the future. Currently, our code does not allow that. So that's something that can be worked out. I don't know if
Doesn't allow what?
the city does not take, well, we don't say no for parks though. Storm retention, and this park in the middle, let's be perfectly clear, it's going to be a storm retention basin. That's what it's going to be, which, hey, when it storms in the summer, you won't have to water the grass in the park.
Be able to play.
No. Kids love water. They will go play in it if it's there.
So do you think the 2-acre park in the middle is big enough, or do you think one of these should be?
If you could get a park out there additionally, and these are just my recommendations, anyone else can make recommendations that they want.
I don't know how to make recommendations, Craig.
Come on.
Say, I want 5 acres instead of 2.
If you want a 2-acre park there and another 2 or 3 on the end. so be it.
What kind of park are you envisioning, or do you specify?
The 2-acre park in the center, large enough for a large soccer field or football field, 2 small peewee soccer fields, and a playset. In talking with an engineer, 2 acres is large enough to put those 3 fields and a playset on. But I would want that, and want that completed by 50%, 187.
Is there any code or standard that requires like a bathroom facility?
Probably not in our code, but there should probably be some kind
I'm
of.
talking like international standard or.
I don't know. If there is.
So Twilla County will have some standards that they have.
I don't think I've ever seen a park that big that didn't have a bathroom in it.
We can put standards in there.
And know as we add amenities, the lots will get smaller.
Well, the lot sizes shouldn't change any, because we're taking the stormwater retention basins and moving part of them. They're gonna have to shift some lots around.
That's why you say it has to be a retention.
That's why, yeah, because they have the ground open here for stormwater retentions. Let's use the ground
Yep.
for the benefit of an entire community.
Yep, I agree. So in your opinion, is this something we can get passed tonight?
I think we could pass it with those conditions, but if our attorney recommends that we table it for 2 weeks, I won't fight him over that. But I would also be comfortable with approving with those conditions, and just have to have the approval of the zoning administrator, the attorney, and the city planner.
I'd be more in favor of that.
Oh, no.
There, I've said my spiel.
All right, who else wants to
That's what
comment?
you were saving it for, was this. I got you.
Is there any more discussion?
John, were you in the middle of a thought?
I can live with that,
You can live with that. Okay.
as long as it's clear what you want done.
Then I put it on you to make a motion, Craig.
All right, I will move that we approve. I have to go back and
23.
see what ordinance this is.
23.
Ordinance 23-12. Zoning map amendment and adopting a development agreement with these conditions.
You can say the ones you just read, can you?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say them out, so the approval is clear for future when we have to look this up. That there be trails and parks, a trail system that runs around the entire residential area. There be a 2-acre park in the middle, which may be used as stormwater retention basin.
Wasn't there gonna be a cemetery?
I'm
Not
pretty sure
on
he didn't
this.
read that the first time.
I remember Joe saying something about that.
An additional park on the west end in a stormwater retention basin,
How big?
minimum 3 acres. The initial park, the center park be completed at 187 units. And the second park be completed before the final unit is, well, we'll say that the final park has to be completed at 180 units. We'll give them 7 units to hang over their head.
Say that again, Craig.
So I lost you.
The second park be completed
And an additional 180.
at, yeah, an additional 180.
360, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. the residential will be capped at 374 with no mixed use in the commercial allowed. That doesn't count against that residential unit. There'll be no short-term rentals, apartments of that type in the commercial areas. Be serviced by public sewer and water. And the final concept plan and development agreement be approved by the zoning administrator, the attorney, and the city planner. One last condition, that we remove the multi-residential standards from the table.
I'll second.
Did you do the height thing too?
We'll give Jen a minute to catch up.
All right.
Can I just think out loud for a minute on your motion?
We can discuss it right now.
On the short-term rentals, could we just say no residential allowed in the commercial except a hotel or a motel?
Yes.
That would solve that problem.
Yes.
Okay, last bit of discussion, it has been moved and seconded. So this doesn't stipulate where funding for maintenance of these, or
So what I was
does it
thinking is,
stipulate construction of the park?
so this is what I would probably put in the, is that it's owned and maintained by the HOA, but it'll have public access. And you might want to think about maybe some type of an option where the city gets to a point and can say, transfer that to us without consideration.
What does without consideration mean?
Because we don't have to pay for
We
it.
don't have to pay for it,
I like that.
because when you get a park department, then
That's Scott's Parks and Rec.
I already have a park.
Yeah.
it's been my experience, when HOAs have ownership, they think it's private,
Yeah.
and they try to keep the public off it, and they're offended by the public, so you might want to pull a trigger at some point and say, okay, it's not yours anymore. But if it's not yours, we're gonna take care of it, and that won't be for a lot of years, I would guess.
I would guess.
Do you like that, Greg, or do you want it to be owned by the city immediately? That could be an expense we,
It's an expense we are not ready to take today. It might be an expense we're ready to take by the time this is half built out. I don't know. And I think the transferring without consideration fixes that. We can more and or less ask for it anytime we want.
What are the time periods we talking? I mean, you have like limits on licenses and limits on building permits. Is there any limit on subdivision type thing that they gotta do something after so many years?
What was the term of this development agreement, 20 years?
Make it 40.
No. No, I don't think we'll make it longer. They have 20 years to build it.
Not enough time, Daryl?
You can tell me what the economy is gonna do, I'll answer that. But no, I mean, if it's, I think 20 years is, if that's what's in here.
So we won't have a city hall for 20 years? Is that-
No, this has nothing to do with the city hall. That's the other side.
that's the other one. All right, any further discussion? We do a roll call vote.
A question, do those things that you just mentioned need to be added into his motion?
Well, I think he did.
Just about the HOA and the parks being able to be transferred over, does that need to be?
Yeah, and John will fix that and it'll all be approved by the,
The three of you?
His amendments are covered in his motion.
Yes.
His amendments and approval.
And anything else I want in there?
I was waiting for that.
All right, any further discussion? Going once. All right, roll call vote. Scott? How do you
Yes,
vote?
yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Jess votes yes. Cale?
Yes.
And Terry?
I'm a 1 acre guy, no.
Terry? That's 4-1, motion passes. All right, proposed ordinance 23-10, restating Title 16 Erda subdivision code. The proposed changes to Title 16 subdivisions is to bring the ordinance into compliance with state requirements. Concept plans are no longer required. Preliminary plat to be approved by the Planning Commission acting as administrative land use authority, and final plat to be approved by staff. The Planning Commission has recommended that the preliminary plat have a public hearing. State code allows for one public hearing on a subdivision. The proposed changes also clarify the financial assurance bond as being 110%. Eliminated major subdivisions are recommending a minor and standard subdivision. In our code, the standard and major subdivision had some different requirements. However, the state code changes all subdivisions besides minor subdivisions must follow the same procedure.
So we actually have until next December to change this. However, it is a much easier process than what our current subdivision code is. So I'm recommending that we go ahead and change it now. There will be tweaks. This will come back before this body as we do other tweaks. This just streamlines the subdivision process is really all these codes.
There are state requirements that we have to stick to.
Correct, and that's all that's in there today. John's found a lot of great recommended changes to the subdivision title that will be coming back before you, but right now, all this does is changes the process for subdivision approval.
This is a have-to requirement for the state.
Correct. And I think it's probably a good thing. It makes it much simpler for the applicant. The thought with the state legislature is that this is going to help streamline and speed up the process of getting subdivisions approved, which is going to help with affordable housing. I'm not quite sure how that connects, but we'll see. If it helps, fantastic. We'll see how it works. But as the chairman mentioned, we cannot require a concept approval. We can offer a pre-application meeting with the applicant if the applicant requests. That is done by staff. Preliminary plat is all that goes before, it doesn't have to go before a public body. We're recommending it goes before the Planning Commission. It has to go before what the state is now calling an administrative land use authority. The Planning Commission is the land use authority, but now the state wants to have an administrative land use authority that approves preliminary plats. And the administrative land use authority may be the Planning Commission, but it cannot be any member of the legislative body. They have completely taken the legislative body out of subdivision approvals.
That's us.
That's you. Yep.
You trust us.
And the Planning Commission may hold a public hearing if they would like, but they can only have one public hearing on a subdivision. It also streamlines all we've done in the code is reference to the state code where the subdivision requirements are placed, rather than putting it all in the code, because I have some pretty good insight that there's going to be more changes made this year. So I didn't want to put all the current changes in the code to turn around and have to change all of those again. So it just references the state code, which gives us timelines for approvals. We have to give initial feedback within so many days, and we can only do 4 reviews for a preliminary, and it's pretty hefty requirements to help streamline and get this through. And then final plat approval has to be by staff. So the way this is written is most of the construction drawings, the layouts, a lot of the engineering details are part of the preliminary plat approval so that that gets seen by the planning commission. And then final plat should just be a plat submittal, just the actual plat, and then verifying that it meets with what was approved by the planning commission in the preliminary plat. It's the only changes we're making today. I know there will be more changes after the end of the legislative session. And they will all be geared towards affordable housing.
All right.
Any questions?
Questions, discussion?
Didn't we discuss this 2 weeks ago or last time we met?
Yes, we have discussed this.
Yeah. So I make a motion that we pass proposed ordinance 23-10, restating Title 15 Erda subdivision code.
Number 16.
16, yeah.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any last discussion? Terry, how do we vote?
Yes.
Cale? Yes. Jess votes yes. Craig?
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
And this motion carried. Council representative reports.
Okay, I'm gonna use this as a thing back to finances, since both of you are here. One of our requirements in one of the many forms I have to fill out requires our contractors to be licensed. I mean, not licensed, but have insurance. And so according to the accountant, he says that both you and Rochelle need to have proof of insurance or get a waiver from workers' comp, or if the council so chooses, we could put them on ours and pay for it. Because they tried to do that, and it was like $400 and something, and I kind of gently talked them out of it.
I bet it was gentle.
But they said that this next time, there has to be something one way or the other, so.
So which insurance is this?
The workers' comp.
Oh, is this workers' comp?
Employees, yeah.
Well, yeah, waiver seems an easy way to do that.
So if you guys can come up with the waivers or something, I don't know if it costs anything or what, but. And then another thing for filling out all these forms is the 5 of us are considered volunteers because we're non-paid, non-everything. And so I got us down as the 5, but then it asked for approximate hours worked. So if each one of you could come up with a monthly figure that you think you put in and let me know, then I can slap a number into that slot.
Craig's about 97, I'm about 3.5. What are you, Jess?
I'm embarrassed to say.
I'll bet it's more than 3.5 a month. Like me.
I think you're more than 3.5, Scott.
Probably 3 3/4.
Okay,
I think that'll take care of mine.
All right, first one's a question, how we want to deal with the problem that we have coming. It doesn't be answered tonight, but we'll have to think about. Public infrastructure, like roads, we have to have an inspector for those. When someone files a permit to build a road, is it 3 or 4%?
I think yours is 4%.
That's the county, is that?
Yeah, no, so when someone applies to build a road in Erda City, we get 4% of what the engineer's estimate to build a road is as a building permit. Comes to Erda City. But we have to provide an inspector to check. Now, they're gonna have a engineering company come do all the compaction tests and that. But we need somebody on site watching to make sure that they're done right, that contractors aren't paying or saying, get friends with, saying, hey, test over here, this spot's really good, test here. Over there where the road's pumping, don't test that, we're just gonna cover that
How
up.
much time is involved in this inspection?
It sounds like a fair amount of time.
They're watching.
But I thought the county takes care of that for us. They're everything.
I don't believe so.
Says if they've done it before, then they have to do it now. So if they performed that service before, they have to perform it now.
I don't know if that applies to new construction.
And they probably would if we gave them all the money, but we've gotta figure out how to do that.
That's another thing we need to do is set up in the next one of these next meetings and have a closed door so we can go over all our contracts and all that stuff to determine the path forward. Because June is the deadline for the current agreements, interlocal agreements.
Yeah.
We have to have a 6-month notice if we're gonna do something.
So this is gonna require somebody that knows
This is gonna require,
road construction.
they do not have to be certified, but it's someone who should have some certifications and a knowledge of how roads go. In talking with Jake, he's like, when they start building a road, this is someone who should be there every day for a little while, just watching how it's being built, make sure that things are going together right, make sure that there's not places that are starting to pump, and if they are, that they are fixed and built right, instead of just saying, well, we're gonna do a deflection test and run a truck down the middle of the road. Jake says, I don't have the time to do that. I can get an inspector to do that, but he wanted to know if the city council wants to look for their own inspector, get another party to do it, have him do it.
Something you can add to your ILA?
Yeah, I mean, so.
Add to what?
Your interlocal agreement with roads.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't wanna give up the 4%.
He's asking for some guidance on.
Because I'm thinking of a perfect person that has building experience and is one of the inspectors for building permits and stuff.
We'll have to talk afterwards, because it might be someone who Jake was considering. But he said, by Majestic View and Sunset, which will start being built before long, says you're looking at potentially, $40,000-$50,000 on these inspection fees. So it's a lot of money coming in, but you're gonna have to if you want good roads, you're going to have a good inspector there.
I think we hire someone on a contract basis, just as we have our other staff.
Okay.
That's what I say too. Then we have the control.
All right. So that was the thought process there. We can look at that. The planning and zoning did issue a conditional use permit for West Auto for the old bargain buggies. So you'll see a new car dealership come there probably in the next few days.
First.
December 1st?
Yep, that's their hope, December 1st.
Did they get a sign?
So tomorrow?
That's today.
Tomorrow?
We're not there
Oh, yeah,
yet.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It was already there. They didn't put up a new one. It was already existing.
And then the airport has reached out to me. They would like to meet with 2 of us and 2 new city council sometime in the month of December before they're sworn in, so we can kind of skirt around open public meetings a little to talk about potential new airport overlay zones.
Or is this so they can leverage?
1, 2, 3.
On someone.
Well, they want the 2 new ones and two of the ones that will be going through to meet with them, and they have a handful of dates in December. I'm here asking if anyone would like to go to a meeting, and we'll try to figure out a date.
It's in my district, so I'll do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll get those dates put up together, and that's all I had.
Scott, we got any resolution on any of the city complaints that have been
Yeah,
given to us?
yeah, sort of. So, up on, I better not describe where we're at, but there was concern about some building permits that weren't applied for and some buildings that went up, and I checked into that, and I'm not sure why fire marshal couldn't find the building permits, but they have the building permits. They've made some changes that they're gonna need to have redone, but, and then, we have an issue of dogs. I talked to those folks and
Oh, my dog, is it?
it's not your dog. And, surprise, surprise, one story is not the same as the other story. So, I'll just have to try and resolve that the best I can. There's not a way really that we can come in and say, look, this is the way it is, because when you got animals involved, anyway, so I'm still working on that.
Sticking with that, I had a similar deal about animal control, so we might need to be looking at something in the future. Do we want to contract that out to Grantsville? Because I know the county does with the Twilla City or something like that. That's something we might, when we do our meetings on all our agreements and stuff, we might want to think about.
Yeah, it could be. That's the only one involving animals that I've had. Let's see, there's another one, home business. They're working on that, but they've had illness.
About the basement dwellers.
So, there's a lot fewer. They don't speak to me, but if there's any of them still there, there's only one or two.
That problem has seemed to have resolved itself.
Yeah. So that was good, because that was gonna get to be nasty, I was afraid. But it seems like even though they were rude to us, they actually listened. So,
We got any more on the flagpole? What about I know they extended the other one, the complaint, labor commission thing. What's happening? You heard anything more on that?
Florida, we don't hear.
No news is good news.
Yeah.
let the sleeping dog lie.
They were concerned as to what, just not acted on.
That's fine with me. Don't have it.
And the estoppel, I thought that was gonna be part of this meeting. Didn't Joe want to go over and news the estoppel agreement for Poker Point?
They did. They asked for a stop agreement for Oker Point. I assumed that maybe John had sent one to them, but they haven't said anything or asked again, huh?
Well, we've got one, so they wanted to change the one we have.
They needed a new one, supposedly.
So we need to sit down with them and go over, see if there's any changes we want to do.
I think what we were hoping is we just change the bylaw.
I think the name of the party is Bakery.
Should we both have a vote to authorize, John will authorize
Issue minister. Yeah,
with the, just to change the name?
I'm
As long as
fine
that's
with
all
that.
changed.
An administrative change to the estoppel agreement,
Yes.
moved.
Second. Moved and seconded that we authorize our council to make an administrative name change to the stop agreement with Oker Point.
I vote,
Or I guess let's do vote. Go ahead.
I vote yes.
Craig? Yes. Jess votes yes. Cal? Yes. Carrie?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, what else?
I have a can of worms to open.
It's only 9 o'clock.
We are talking to Bird.
So, do we have any option on proposed roads that were proposed before we became a city but are not built? Specifically talking about the road connecting Tom's Lane straight through the Gulls property up to
Liddell.
Cochran Lane, right by Jerry Gergich's place.
It was supposed to have been
I know they said at one time that was all paid for, and
They had to get going on under, they was
They had
gonna
to have
lose
a
federal
plan so they could
funding,
keep
and
their-
then they came back and says the federal funding died, now we gotta reapply for the
Okay.
state one.
so here's my point.
It's in their design right now.
If we don't want that, we have to have it, because it is to a
We-
point where we can't.
We already
Change it.
authorized Twilla County to do it on our behalf.
County's got money.
People that live there want it.
I remember a
No.
specific vote on it.
Yeah.
No, the people that live there don't want it. Because I've
What are you
talked,
talking?
Well, it's eminent domain on their property.
yeah,
The right of way
Yeah.
is,
I know
yeah,
about it.
well,
They
and
bought
the
all the ground,
the
right?
Gulls are not happy about it, but here's why I'm not happy about it. This is gonna be a de facto thoroughfare from Stansbury Park to Twilla.
Well,
And it's not gonna be a little bit of traffic. It's gonna be a ton of traffic. And I'm not in favor of that,
I think it's already been passed.
but we probably have no option.
You got it. The feds are in design.
we, over a year ago,
Yeah.
authorized.
There's things we
to
had to
do it.
do. Yeah.
I never thought of Stansbury to the temple traffic. But
I
the
didn't
thing
either
is,
until
even
recently.
without it, there's still gonna be an increase of traffic on that S turn.
Sure.
And then around.
Sure.
To Tom's Lane.
Will we have options? For example, I suspect they'll want to take out the stop sign at Church Road so that
That would be
traffic
us.
flows north and south.
That would be our decision.
So we could control that.
Yes.
Speed limits.
All this grant does is build the road. You guys control the rest.
Okay, well, that'll
So
help.
you asked for city engineer for recommendation as to where the stop sign is, stop lights.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because there's standards, you don't want to mess with the standards, because if someone gets hit, with all your standards, guess who's involved?
okay.
Even if you got low standards.
So what is, there's a home being constructed and they're bringing lots and lots of gravel and dirt and sludge onto the road. Before I go down and talk to these folks, I probably want to know what our code calls for. Do we have any control over that?
Putting junk on our road,
Yeah,
Well,
just debris.
Track out.
that'd have a track in there.
Is there anywhere in our code that requires track?
That's state code. How large is the lot?
It's on a 5-acre lot.
Anything over 1 acre requires a disturbance permit. They need, it's state SWIP, stormwater pollution prevention.
Even though this is just gravel and dirt and mud.
Yeah.
Because if it's on the road, if a storm comes, then it washes off the road and gets into the stormwater system and can become a pollutant.
Because the airport's had a lot of traffic building in their deal, and they had a sweeper there tonight going down the road.
That was, okay, that answers my question. That was my next question. We do have a complaint about noise, specifically Jake brakes. Are there lots of trucks moving down Erda Way now?
Well, there is by there, but that BLM's building something out there, so there for a while, there was a whole bunch of trucks headed out that way.
BLM's building something where?
At the airport.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Their new.
And they're working
wildfire management.
sewer and water to it and everything else, so.
So I think a couple of you have talked about this. We need to draft an ordinance
No Jake breaks in this.
restricting, not restricting, prohibiting Jake brakes. I have Jake brakes.
In the city.
When I drive past a sign that says Jake brakes restricted, I'm thinking, oh, well, I can't use it as often as but it needs to say prohibited.
Okay, on SR 36, you've got Kilgore and everybody else, all the side dumps and dump trucks, and they are throwing all kinds of debris. My wife's Honda just, has got 3 cracks in her windshield now. And
Call the highway patrol.
with Kilgore and everybody else going up and down SR 36. I mean, they're impacting the highway. They're putting it, tracks U-tracks on the highway. So that's making it, and they're going in and out of Adobe Rock. Now, Adobe Rock is also building a building right next to its own facility. Okay, so they can have a building permit for that.
Well, they're not in Erda
That's
City.
Twilla County.
They're in Twilla County,
Yeah.
right?
I'm sure they have to have a building
And
permit.
then
Why?
you guys mentioned earlier today about talking about Patrick Moore. When he fires up the dragsters in his barn, it looks like a barn. I mean, you know, at my house, the entire windows rumble and just.
All right, let's keep moving here.
So, anyway, where were we at? We were at the gravel. So we do have the ordinance there.
Great, well,
And then, how do we draw up the Jake break
Tell me
prohibition?
to do it, and I'll bring it to you.
I say yes.
I say yes.
There you go.
Okay, got 3. Will do.
We can probably do it citywide, can't we?
And not within city limits.
Does that include Highway 36, state highway?
I don't think we can restrict 36.
What's in city limit?
Stay high.
They put their Jake brakes on SR 36 every morning. It rumbles my windows.
Yeah.
A helicopter goes over my
I don't think we can do
home twice or 3 times a day.
that. Okay. That's the end of my can of worms.
Anybody else? General comments?
Just want to remind everybody, the 5th of September is our canvas meeting at the fire station.
What?
December?
I thought he said
September.
The canvas meeting.
December.
So 5th of December, we're having a canvas meeting to certify the election results. That will be at the fire station.
Well, I move we adjourn.
I second.
Moving second, we adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 That was very good, Craig. I'm glad you scoped out.
Craig, I thought one more thing we should have talked about that I'm doing this. Use.
External use.
Maybe use.